Hi YouTubers, I am so happy to be back in our channel. This is our channel, this is not my channel, it's ours, me and you. So welcome back to our channel, and thanks to those who have subscribed and have liked my videos. The comments, please keep them coming. The questions that you may have, please keep them coming. So I am just gonna make this short video today. I'm just gonna deal with philosophy, introduction to African philosophy. So I just want to deal with the question of critically comparing Wiredu's classification of African philosophy with that of Oruka's 4 trends in African philosophy. But before we get into the question of critically comparing the two, we now have to deal with the question of what is a trend, what do we know, and what do we understand about trends, so what we become aware as we now go through philosophy and we read through philosophy, we become aware that a trend comes on about when we have philosophers that differ in the way in which they develop their philosophies. So trends will come on about when these philosophers differ about what constitutes a philosophical problem and how about these problems are to be formulated. And they come on about when we also see them differing about their fields of interest and the relative importance of these interests. So that's how we get on we get these trends. These philosophers further differ about the appropriate methods to be used to deal with these trends. That is, they differ about the nature and status of suggested solutions to problems and the authorities to be followed in doing philosophies. So that's how we get trends, because we have philosophers who differ in terms of philosophy or their ways in which they want to get to resolve these philosophical questions and how these questions are now formulated. Hence we have trends. Hence we have Oruka's trends, we have Wiredu's classifications, of which we also see them as, again, trends. By that I mean Wiredu's classifications, we see them as trends. Now I want to firstly deal with Wiredu, because I would like us to talk about to start by talking about Wiredu's classifications. So under Wiredu's classifications, we have 2 classifications, that is traditional African philosophy and contemporary African philosophy. So by traditional African philosophy, we see that it has a communal as well as an individualized component, and this philosophy is not presented through text but through commonly accepted practices of Africans. Whereas with contemporary African philosophy, we see that it undergoes evolution in Africa, and it is a professional and academic philosophy which is presented through texts and many other educational means. So this component is smuggling the techniques of the Western philosophy and clearly associates itself with the Anglophone and the Francophone African philosophy. So there are 2 distinctions between the traditional African philosophy and the contemporary African philosophy. We see that traditional African philosophy is not presented through text, but through commonly accepted practices of Africans. And contemporary is now is academic and is presented through texts. So that's what we see the difference between Wiredu's classifications, or we can say Wiredu's trends. Now I want us to now move to Oruka's strand, and now deal with Oruka's strand. So under Oruka's strand, we have the ethno-philosophy, we have the philosophic sagacity, we have professional philosophy, we have nationalist ideological philosophy. So by ethno-philosophy, what do we mean exactly? We see that ethno-philosophy deals much with the beliefs found in African cultures. Now, these beliefs include the activities of the kind. Such an approach treats an African philosophy as a set of similar beliefs which are not based on human reason or scientific knowledge. So ethnophilosophy is a communal thing and not an individualized thing. So this trend is classified as a trend which came from ethnic philosophy. So ethnophilosophy, we see that as beliefs that are like of a group, of a community. They are beliefs formulated by a community, but not by an individualized. It is not an individualized belief. So it is not your belief alone, but it is the community's belief or a certain ethnic's beliefs. And now we move to philosophic sagacity. What do we see when we now talk about philosophic sagacity? What do we get from that is that it is an individualized version of ethno-philosophy. So this trend characterizes the beliefs of individuals as opposed to those of of a community. So remember, with ethno-philosophy, we have the community's beliefs and not individualized beliefs. And with philosophic sagacity, we have an individualized version of the ethno-philosophy, and we have beliefs of individuals as opposed to those of like a community. So the premise here in philosophic sagacity is that the sage goes beyond mere knowledge and understanding to reflection and questioning the truth against all odds. Sage philosophy is still known as the widely unwritten aspect of African philosophy. So it lives in the minds of individuals and not in text. Right? Let us not again forget that with Wiredu's classification, when we go back to contemporary is in text, right? Let us not forget that we are comparing here. But we are not comparing like Oruka's classifications, Oruka's trends to like with each other. No, we are simply comparing Oruka's trends with those of Wiredu's classifications. But I just wanted you to note some certain things here, that with Oruka, me trying to explain like Oruka's 4 trends, showing you guys that with Oruka's trends we have the ethno-philosophy that deals with communal beliefs, and then we have the philosophic sagacity that deals with individual beliefs, right, or belief, however you may want to put it. So now the third Oruka's trend is professional philosophy. So this trend has a claim that for a philosophy to be authentic and real, it must be put in writing. So it then suggests that ethno-philosophy and sage philosophy are not part of the philosophy because they are not represented in text. They are not written. So we see Oruka's last trend, which is the nationalist ideological philosophy. That might be seen like as a special trend of philosophic sagacity. So in which not sages but ideologues are the subject of this nationalist ideological philosophy. So with the sagacity, we know that we have sages, but with national ideological philosophy we have ideologues as the subjects is the subject of this philosophy. So we might see it as professional political philosophy because it has a lot of political techniques in it. So we might refer to it as a tank of ideology and not philosophy. So now I want us to move to where we can now discuss these philosophers, who these philosophers are, and their contribution to the classification of African philosophy. So we see that Kwasu Wiredu was a philosopher who argued that African philosophy must be distinguished from traditional world views, and the reasons for that was to emphasize that it is being produced by contemporary philosophers and is still in the making. So to refresh our minds, remember we have two classifications. We reduced two classifications, being traditional African philosophy and contemporary African philosophy. Now he says that we have to remember that this philosophy is being produced by contemporary philosophers and it is still in the making. And when we look at contemporary African philosophy, we see that it is still undergoing evolution in Africa, and it is a professional and academic philosophy which is presented through texts and many other educational means. So this component is smuggling the techniques of the Western philosophy and clearly associates itself with the Anglophone and the Francophone African philosophy. So that's what we see when we then get to think of who Wiredu was, right? And moving to Oruka, who was Oruka? In our studies, we see that when studying Oruka's classification, keeping in mind that discussing in who Oruka was by studying his classification, we see that Oruka comes from the English-speaking side and does not represent Francophone African philosophy in his classification. So the classification by this philosopher of different approaches in African philosophy into rather trends is well known and gives rise to heated controversy. So he uses a fourfold classification, which is the trends that we have mentioned: the ethnophilosophy, being that of with ideas of philosophers who try to reconstruct traditional Bantu indigenous worldview; the sage philosophy, ideas of African sages on selected philosophical issues. We have nationalist ideological philosophers, which ideas of politicians on social and cultural and economic reconstruction of African countries in a post-colonial era. And number 4, we have the professional philosophy, which are the ideas of philosophy, ideas of professionally trained students and teachers of philosophy in Africa. So my 2 cents opinion is that when you start with this activity or the assessment, you can now start by introducing these philosophers, these 2 philosophers, who were they, and who they are, and the trends and classifications of which they have introduced, and that being their contribution to the African philosophies being those trends that they have introduced, and now you can now compare them by explaining what they are, right, and what do they entail, and you can set out their similarities and set out their differences when you are comparing them. And again, you need to again highlight their strengths and their weaknesses, and state which of the two classifications you would rather prefer. So I think when you now look at and you have stated them, you will be able to see their strengths and their weaknesses after you have now then compared them, and then you can now choose the one that you prefer. And by seeing their weaknesses or their strengths, I would reckon that you look at the critiques, how these trends were criticized. For instance, the Oruka's 4 trends, they were widely discussed and praised and criticized at the same time, and they had marked influence on the development of African philosophy because they provided like a framework for the study and discussion of the African philosophy. So that's one of the strengths that Oruka's philosophies had. Alright, so you can just look at their critiques, how they criticized them and how they were praised, and then now you can now set out the strengths of these philosophies and their weaknesses as to how they were criticized. But furthermore, the only thing that's going to help you get these critiques is by reading through your study guide, your material, and you will now be able to set them out. You'll also be able to set the trends out and explain them more largely than I did, so, and more articulate than I did. So I reckon you to go to your material, your study material, and read furthermore on that, and so that you are able to articulate yourself better and explain them better than I have done here. But my thing here was to give you an idea of how you can go on about and tackle this activity. And even when you have an exam and you come across like a question like this, you'll know what to say, how to say it, and you will be able to understand it. So my thing with me making these videos is not to give you answers, but is for me to give you like a better understanding of what these philosophies are, and how to at least try and understand them better than not knowing or understanding them at all. You find yourself reading, but you don't really know, you don't really understand what's going on here. But yeah, so my thing is to give you like a better understanding. And remember, philosophy is not like it's philosophy, man, is, you just have to remember that we have different types of philosophies with opinions, different types of opinions, and you shouldn't take Wiredu's philosophy and now want to make it like and say it's the right answer as opposed to Oruka's philosophy. You have to take them as they are, because these things are philosophies that come from philosophers with different opinions. Hence we have like trends, hence we have the word trend, and we have these trends from these philosophers, and we need not to separate them. We need not to try and distinguish which one was right and which one was wrong. When they want you to answer as to which philosophy or trends you prefer, then you can say you prefer this trend because of these reasons, giving the strengths and weaknesses of such trends. So you will be able to answer that question, to say I prefer this trend or these trends because they have so and so weaknesses, or they have so and so strengths. So remember, with philosophy, read it with an open mind, that you are reading different types of opinions from different types of people or philosophers. So I wish you the best of luck in your studies, and I so wish that you make it, you pass, so that you can pass the knowledge to other students or to other people that may need it or make use of it. And I wish you the best with your assignments, with your exams, and I wish only the best for you. I love you, and anything that you would like to ask about, please go to the comment sections or send me an email, and then I will respond back to you. If then there's a part where you differ with me, please share on the comment section, so that everybody can benefit from the knowledge that you have, and I can also benefit from the knowledge that you have. So I trust that you will do well. I trust that you are people who work smart, and yeah, thank you so much. Please like and subscribe. To like those who haven't subscribed, please subscribe to my channel. We are growing, and we are gonna grow, and I want to grow with you. I want to learn with you. I want to give you a piece of my knowledge. Where I know, I'll share. Where I don't know, I'll be honest with you to say that this part I don't know, but I'll try and get somebody who knows it better and who can explain it better to you. So keep on winning, my YouTubers. Bye.